Hey friends, we're at the shop this morning, waiting for stuff to dry out on the job site. Let me adjust you there. As proven by yesterday, my camera skills really stink. Hopefully I'll get better as the days go by and months go by and whatnot. But I have been wanting to do this video for like ever. And I really never even, before I thought about doing videos, I've always been, it's always driven me crazy. Let me get, see, here we go with the camera thing again. Okay, here we go. Now maybe, okay. So anyway, back to task. I've always laughed, especially when I watch YouTube. I love YouTube, for information and learning new things and stuff. And, you can geek out about the wrong things in building things and construction, and you can overthink things to where it's just silly. As a carpenter, being an apprentice in the union program here in St. Louis, I have to preface that with, I was a woodworker first, when I was a kid, but then I got into, Norm Abram and the New Yankee Workshop and, this old house, and learned a lot of stuff. And, so that was inspiration. That was before internet, I had his books. I was building projects out of his books. And then all of a sudden he started getting sponsorships and Delta, to name one company, and the amount of endorsements that he had was just crazy, which, good for him. He's one of the few master carpenters that I would call a master carpenter. That's another video of what is a master carpenter. There's a lot of people on the internet that call themselves master carpenters, and I've worked with enough carpenters through my apprenticeship, and then when I became a journeyman, worked with guys that had it. I mean, really had it. And was fortunate enough to work with about 5 guys that were just bulletproof. And you talk about some inspiration and wanting to be like them. And, so all that condensed, woodworking and the marketing behind woodworking wants to sell you. I mean, the companies, salesmen and marketers and people that do marketing, and companies every year they're making something new and trying to make a better mousetrap. And it just gets ludicrous. And the first thing that I'll come to is the carpenter's pencil sharpener. And that's just like sacrilege. If you can't, it's like, if you can't build a set of sawhorses, if you're building a house or you're doing a room addition or something, if you can't take 2x4s and build yourself a set of sawhorses, I tried to work for a guy a couple of years ago, and I'll come back to him too. He was trying me out, and I needed the money at the time. Things were, to where you have to go out and look for something to do. You've got to get off your butt sometimes and do some stuff you don't want to. But that said, first day, was nothing I couldn't handle. And then the next day I was like, where are the sawhorses? And it's like, oh, they're over there in the corner. And so I go over in the corner and I'm like, no, where are the sawhorses? And he's like, no, they're leaning up against the wall. And I'm like, you mean these plastic things? and he had Stanley Fat Max plastic sawhorses. Now, as a carpenter of 25, almost 30 years, I was like, well, oh, I can't hang with that. In fact, I can't hang with this. It turned in as a couple of more days went by. It was a chaotic mess, and this guy was really scrambling. He had his main guy quit, and I was just like, sorry, dude, I can't hang. And the plastic sawhorses were kind of like the the indication of just like, this isn't my bag. You know, we're not on the same page with this. And there was another thing that leads into what I've always thought about doing more with less. I think that's what the union taught me, and being on job sites, building banks and schools, and being in a subdivision, building houses on a regular basis, and just busting your butt, working for general contractors, where you're expected to perform, and the more tools you get out, the more time it takes. And, you know, sometimes you do. Sometimes a project is like that, but sometimes you just need to get out the hand bangers, the 16-penny coated sinkers, and a hammer and drive nails. Sometimes you need to grab a handsaw after you've already rolled up and you've got a piece of concrete form that needs to be trimmed. What are you gonna do? Go to your truck and get out your extension cord and your saw and run out there just to cut off 8 inches of concrete form? No, you're gonna go grab a handsaw. So you young guys, you need to, you know, this is just my opinion. All of this is just my opinion. You know, I'm a cranky old get off my grass carpenter. That's just the way, it's just the way it is. So rambling a little bit, but doing more with less is really what it came down to. And, you know, and I still get into situations where I'm building a set of stairs or whatever it is. And at the end of the day, you're like, oh my God, it's like a kid's toy explosion in the house. You know, it's like, who got all these tools out? And it's like, well, you're the only one on the job. You got all the tools out. But early on, just simple stuff, knowing how to build a set of sawhorses that can hold an entire bunk of 2x4s, but yet provide you stability to where you can make a really precise cut with a handsaw. But all this is, these are topics for other videos. So anyway, the second thing, which was actually the first thing, the sawhorses happened after the pencil incident. I call this the pencil incident. So I'm framing this wall for a gigantic Marvin window, and it's, you know, wall's almost done, and he hands me this. And being an old get off my grass, set in his ways carpenter, I'm like, what's this for? Am I gonna make a blueprint? What am I doing? This is what you know, you use for drawing a plan. He's like, no, I want you to use this in your work. And I was like, well, how do I even keep it in my pouch without breaking the lead? Well, it has a built-in sharpener on it up here. You can use that and you can keep it sharp. And this is what I want you to use. And so while he was there, you know, I was like, how do I mark a 2x4 with this without breaking the lead, for God's sakes? So while he was there, I used it. And then when he left, this is all you need. And you don't need, unless you're doing furniture, fine furniture, or you're fitting something on a job. And actually, if you're going to use a mechanical pencil, this, 10-cent Bic pencil is better because the lead stays the same size. If you're sharpening a pencil like this, that lead is enormous and it just gets bigger. So I've had a good chuckle over that because I call this the holy pencil. I kept it. But let's just put this over here because this goes with this. A T-square, your triangles, an architect's rule, that's where that belongs. And hey, you know, if you think that that's going to make you a better carpenter, who am I to stop you? But I mean, for God's sakes, let's get real. So then I wanted to get into actual marking and measuring because you can overthink. You really can. If you're building a wall, you know, holy schmoly, you know, being able to read a tape and being able to cut your pencil line, either leave the line, take the line, split the line, those are skills that you have to learn. And if you're a DIYer, that helps. That will save you a lot of headache. So anyway, I have assembled some stuff that I really want to cover, and I'll try to cover it fast because I have to get to the job site. But people just go crazy, you know, and every time I go by, I'm in Home Depot or one of the home centers and I see a sharpener to sharpen one of these, I kind of chuckle. And it all goes back to the industry is trying to sell you a bunch of stuff you don't need. You need to develop the skills that you don't even have to think about. So anyway, I've assembled a collection. I have a piece of 3/4 inch plate that will become apparent here in a little bit. But, you know, obviously, you have a regular pencil, and a lot of guys use a regular pencil, which there's no big deal. But you know, what are you going to do when you're up on a roof? Carry a pencil sharpener with you. You have to hand carve this, and then your lead goes down to nothing teeny. But these are good for scribing as well because you can carve this to where it'll lay down flat. In later videos, I'll talk about scribing and stuff and get into stuff, you know, get into some more stuff that I've learned in more detail. This is a scriber. This is very sharp and it'll scribe metal, it'll scribe wood. If you're cutting tenons, if you're doing joinery, stuff like this, if you're cutting mortise and tenons or dados and trying to fit wood and trying to, you know, if you're actually making wood joints, you know, then that's a whole different game. But for, I mean, my goodness, for framing a roof or, you know, and that's the cool thing about the flat pencils. They get smaller and you can keep them in your pouch because when you drop your pencil and it goes down to the subfloor, a lot of times, like if you're setting trusses, you don't have time to go down and get one pencil. So you carry more than one pencil, usually 3 pencils, 3 carpenter's pencils, a roll of electrical tape in case you cut yourself, because if the crane is on the job, you're not getting down. You have to tape it up and keep going. And another reason, if you're on a roof with this pencil, up, there it goes. There it goes. So anyway, different pencils. Carpenter pencils. That's what a carpenter pencil looks like new. And that's the other thing. I can't believe that you know, Home Depot and whatnot, they make you buy your pencils. Lumberyard's a real lumberyard. The driver, when he makes a delivery, he'll give you a handful of pencils. This pencil I do like for the shop. If you can learn it, I forget how many millimeters this is, like 0.025 or something like that. But if you can split this line with a saw, you're doing very well. So that leads me to my next thing, which, I'm gonna have to do this, and I may have to set you guys up. I may have to take you out of the folder, whatever it is. So I'm taking out that of my knife. And okay, yes, it's time to set you guys up in a different way. So let's see, maybe I can do this. I can do this. Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay. So, new blade. By the way, I love these knives. I like the old school knives too, because we used to mess with the bosses on the old school utility knives. A little aside. This one lost its screw, but the boss used to get upset with us because it would take, you know, they'd be on the job giving you trouble, and you'd go, well, just a minute, I need to change my utility knife blade. So you'd have to get out your screwdriver and you'd slowly take out your screw and you'd change your blade, and it just would, like, yeah, I would tweak them, and it was like fun. So anyway, okay, so let's try this. If I can hold this thing and do it. So you got your pencil. You're gonna go like that first. And you might go like that again. And this is really hard to do holding a camera. I can do this in like 10 seconds. So I've got an angle down. Where's it? There it is. So I've got an angle down. And that's pretty good. Yeah. Okay. And usually for me, this is usually like one stroke. Then, let's see. And you're cutting down. So now you've got your triangle. Get it in focus here. Then you turn it to the flat and you cut down. So then that gives you a guide. And then you just kind of carve the lead. And that's a little more crooked than I normally do, but jeepers creepers. Look, oh, get it in focus. And that's why I laughed I just wanted to laugh at this guy, and I couldn't. So I was trying to be nice. But I mean, I got the lead sticking out of that, and the lead sticking out of that. And he actually had like this leather holster on his pouch belt. Let's see. Oh, that's better. But how is this better than this? You be the judge. And this only carries one thing of lead. If you run out of lead, you know. So, there you go. Let's see if we can get this in focus a little bit better. There you go. Now, the other thing is Stanley tapes are awesome. And I actually don't mind the DeWalt's, although I wore this out and I don't have the Fat Maxes. But I wore this out in about 6 months. The Fat Maxes usually last about a year. They're just great tapes. But, you know, I mean, that's bright. I mean, and you know, so I guess I need to back up a little bit. So really what you're talking about, or people are trying to, you know, get at with pencils, is accuracy. And oh my gosh, there was one video that I saw that some guy was actually doing a review on his new look. Oh, and he actually spent research time on the internet looking for this, not this. And I mean, I just shut the video down. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna smack myself in the face. So anyway, this comes down to marking thusly, you know, and you've got a clear tape, you know, the numbers are clear. And these are the ones that, these big 35s are what I use on the job site. This is a shop tape. I don't mind this tape. It's okay. It gets me by. I do like this guy because it has 30 seconds for, I think, the first foot. But even if you're building a simple cabinet or a carcass to a cabinet, you know, people worry about all the wrong stuff. They really do. Being able to mark out, split your line, take the line, or leave the line. And if you're making, you know, if your pencil looks like a Crayola crown, you know, you have to be able to adapt. If you're out in the field and a truss is swinging in and you have to make a mark somewhere real fast and you've got, you know, you've got a stubby, you have to adapt. You have to realize you're going to be making a big line, and then you have to really think where you're going to cut it. And as you get, you know, as your career goes along, you know, that just becomes second nature. Next is a stick rule, which is basically like this. I find these sometimes hard to read, but the thing I like about the stick rule is that in the wind, if you have to make some precise stuff going on, it doesn't blow around. It's almost impossible to make a 35-foot measurement in high wind. And you're not going to make a 35-foot measurement with that. But if you're using a transit, and you know, you're not using a stick, we like to use tapes. Tapes are easier because you can put it in your pocket. You don't have to walk around with the stick. When you're doing foundation work, it's good to use the stick. But, you know, precision is kind of a flexible term. Being precise with this is actually from Home Depot, which is actually pretty good. I like these. I use these in the shop because these are pretty darn accurate, and I've gotten to where I will actually go to millimeters if I can check it. I mean, I can read 30 seconds and 64ths, although with trifocals, 64ths are pretty darn hard to read. But millimeters are pretty great. But for like truing a fence, you know, and a tape, if you're doing something like a cabinet carcass, but it just depends. I mean, it's dependent on what you're doing. You know, you can check, and that's accurate. And since I have a sacrificial fence on my main fence, I have to measure everything. And, you know, I was thinking about an aftermarket fence for that baby, but you know what? That would totally destroy the vibe of that saw from 1956 or whenever. That thing is a beast. Anyway, getting back on task. So, accuracy, I think, you know, these guys, this guy, you're talking about accuracy. Even with the pencils, you're talking accuracy, you know. I have some friends that are machinists and they laugh at me because I'll talk about precision and they deal with thousandths of an inch every day. Once in a while, I do deal with thousandths of an inch, and I'm not as good as they are. But when you have a machine like this, you kind of have to become a mechanic and a machinist. And oh, let me get this. So I do have some dial indicators, and this is a machinist level, which has leveled everything in the shop. It's leveled all these benches, the radial arm saw. Everything at my shop is the same height. The benches are the same height. The router table is the same height. Obviously, where the dovetail jig is, it's not the same height. But, and all of that was set and checked with regular levels, and then just for giggles, you know, especially the machinery, it was set with this. Because with what you're using to cut with, the more precise, in a shop setting anyway, and really even in a building situation, you try to conserve your 1/16. If you allow an eighth over 20 feet, you know, that's a lot. That's too much. That's enough to throw something really out of square. So anyway, we're getting into, there's another machinist-oriented thing. This is a machinist-oriented combination square. These this is a bench rule. These are machined within thousandths of an inch. The bench rule, the machinist combo square. And these are dead accurate. The dial indicator right here, everything is trued. This slot is trued to the blade. And I pick one tooth and mark it, one tooth, mark it, and get a reading here, and then rotate the tooth and move it down, and it gives me a reading. And, you know, you try to get that as close. I mean, you're dealing with 0.0 whatever when you get to that. And, you know, and then you come over to tri-squares. There's a combination square and my little teeny man square for small hands. But those get dropped and those have to be checked. And you check them. This is my little alcove of machinist-oriented things. This is an engineer square. So is this. And you check your machinery with the most precise stuff you can. But, I mean, out in the field, that's pretty much unheard of. You have a square, you have a speed square. Most of us carry speed squares. Sometimes I'll carry a tri-square, which is those squares over there. But, you know, you have to check. It's a really crazy thing. You know, you've got to check the machine, then you have to run wood through it. And even if your stuff is, your machines are reading out good deal, if your wood is not coming out square, you know, then you have to keep tracking bugs down, and sometimes it gets to drive you crazy. So yeah, then once you dial one machine in, then you dial the other machine in, and you dial the other machine in, and you dial the other machine in. And guess what? You're using the machines together. You're doing a task here, then you're moving it over here, vice versa, and everything has to work together and be fine. If you cut a groove or a dado, or not a dado, but if you cut a groove on the table saw and cut it to length, and then the piece of wood you're dealing with, you know, that groove isn't square on the bottom, you know, you're not, it's not right. But anyway, I digress. These are subjects for other times. So basically, you know, if you're out in the field, my philosophy is mechanical pencils belong at the drawing board and in finite situations in the shop, and your carpenter pencils and your regular pencils, depending on the application, and your utility knife with the sharp blade. Now, that's another thing. If you try to sharpen a carpenter pencil with a hacked up utility knife blade, it's not going to work. You need to have a sharp blade. But pretty much, if you're taking this out on the job site, or you're taking a carpenter pencil sharpener on the job site, that's what you're doing to yourself. It's just not worth it. And it's dumb. Just my opinion. I wouldn't say dumb. I would just say counterproductive. So, yeah. I hope that helps anybody. I'm sure some people are going to be like, you're retarded. I use a mechanical pencil all the time. But you know what? You need this, you need a square, you need a power saw, hand saw, and there's a lot you can do with that. Pouch full of nails. And that's enough. Hand nailing is another crotchety old carpenter video coming up. Yeah, knowing when and where, I'm taking probably a really good picture of the ceiling. Knowing when and where to use what is really what it matters. So I keep this, and it gives me a good chuckle. Adios. See you on the next one.